Hello everyone, I'm Brian and welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue.
That we kill off at the bottom.
This is so wonderful. I don't feel crazy when I listen to you too. I think there's a couple things. This idea of, you have someone like each of you. I always think I have two children.
Oh.
And I think, if we raised each child like they were the found Dalai Lama, they go to find the Dalai Lama in some country and say, or some village and say, you're the Dalai Lama, and they raise this child to think that they are this divine person. If we were to revere and raise each child in that way, I think, thinking they were the next whatever, don't you think that would completely change the way, in other words, what you said earlier about how we look at kids and we think we know so much more, but really, I think we're here to serve them.
Yeah, but
I'd like to try to answer that one. We do know more than kids. We know how to survive a bit better. It is just that because we have more stored information, in that terms we do. Now with Sadhguru's intellect, I think I can't really quote him on what he's saying about intellect, but in terms of our wonder and learning, I think is that between the adult and the kid. But in terms of stored memory, obviously we have adults have more. I don't think you should necessarily treat your kids well. This is probably I don't know how he would say about treating kids, but in terms of just adults, you don't spoil your kids essentially, like worshipping your kids, but be wise. Teach them ways. Don't teach them how to think, or what to think. Sorry, but how to think. Don't force your ideas on them. Just make them curious and wonder. Seek the answer, not tell them the answer.
if you had too many Dalai Lamas, what would you do?
Well, there'd be a lot more peace on Earth, I think.
No.
Maybe.
The thing is, I know this is a common word used in this part of the world about raising children. You can't raise children. You can raise cattle. You can't raise children. This is an idea you must give up. Children grow up, as Ken pointed out in the beginning, you can only create a conducive atmosphere. They grow up. It doesn't matter. You have two children. How old are they?
One is almost 7 and one is 9.
Okay, you will see as they grow. Though it is the same genetics, same food, same homes, maybe same school, you will see one will go like this, another will go like that, because there are different ways to perceive the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The receptivity in our mind is of different ways. If we have to get into technicality of this, in yoga we recognize 10 dimensions of receptivity. I'll talk about 5 because the other 5 are too esoteric. These 5 are referred to as centers of sleep, centers of memory, centers of imagination, centers of right perception, centers of perversion. It is there in all of us. If it comes something, let's say the same information or a same aspect comes to all of us right now. Somebody is little sleepy mode, some of them are. Little sleepy mode, they will perceive it one way. Somebody is deep into their memory of whatever their experience of lives are, they will perceive it one way. Somebody is in a heightened state of imagination, they will perceive it one way. Somebody is in a state of equanimity, they will perceive it one way. Somebody has taken extreme positions of right or wrong, they will perceive it another way. So whatever I may give you, depending upon from which center you receive, accordingly it becomes that. So you may have 2 children, same home, everything same, all input same, but one will go like this, one will go like that, because every moment how they're receiving what is coming their way. So now, the important thing is, as I said earlier, when you say picking up a young child and saying, you're the Dalai Lama, you're the spiritual teacher, with all due respect to the institution of what it is, I'm saying you're trying to influence them powerfully. An intelligence should not be influenced. An influenced intelligence is a dangerous intelligence. An intelligence which is on but not influenced will always be a solution. An intelligence which is profoundly influenced by this or that is always a divisive intelligence. It is me versus you, it will become. Strong sense of rights and wrongs, strong sense of this is it or that is it, will always create conflict, however good it may look to you. See, right now, I'll take an extreme example, an example you're not supposed to speak in America. For example, right now, there is an Islamic state. We need to look at this in reality, what it is. There is somebody out there who believes in something which is more precious to them than their life. Yes? When a man is willing to die for something that he believes, you have to at least recognize he's genuine, all right? There is no better proof. But the result of that, what horrendous things happen is another thing, okay? The consequence of that firm belief is another thing. But you have to appreciate this man believes that there is something that he believes in which is far more precious than his own life. When I say life, I want you to look at this, whether it's an ant or an elephant, whatever life you take, every life holds its own life of highest importance. You try to catch a little ant does not think, oh, I'm just a little ant, let me die. He does everything possible to live. This is the nature of life, that is so for a human being also. This life is precious for this life, but I'm willing to throw this away for something that I believe in. I'm saying that…
Like, I guess, I was gonna say bees, they throw their life… well, they don't throw their life away, but bees are another one where if they sting you, they, in a sense, die. So when they sting you, they know they're gonna… well, I don't know if they know they're gonna die, but they're gonna die. But it goes back to what he's saying about there's… they value the protection of their hive above themselves, so they're willing… I don't know if they're willing, I don't know if they have will to do that, but they're programmed to go sting until the threat goes away.
the belief is genuine, okay, but the result is horrendous. So if you strongly influence your children, whatever you think is right, don't think the result will be good.
I'm not of this generation, and I really appreciate what you're talking about.
Something visually apparent you don't have to announce.
Oh my god! Sadhguru, oh my god.
But I am more ancient than you can see.
There you go.
In listening to both of you, I was wondering why the economic is not part of what perhaps, that's what I feel. I feel children who have economic wealth and more means are able to do the testing, able to go to those private schools, able. And I think that's changing the tenor of education, certainly in our country, and I'm disturbed by it. And I don't know how you guys think about that.
No, there's no question about it. All the figures support that view, that kids from middle class and wealthier backgrounds do better at school. They do better at tests. Kids from impoverished backgrounds do much less well. Non-graduation rates are much higher in impoverished backgrounds, of which there are many more than there used to be. It's true in certain of our African American communities and Hispanic communities. It's also the case that although it'd be wrong to say if you don't graduate from high school, you go to jail, that's not true. Obviously not. People often have wonderful lives. They just didn't happen to finish high school. What is true is a very high proportion of people in jail, actually over 60% of people in the correctional system in America did not complete high school. So there's a very, very considerable and significant economic dimension to all of this. And it's creating a chasm in the country that I think it has to be addressed in an urgent kind of a way. No, but
Before he goes on, I'll say I think I myself I don't know if I would consider be poor or not. I think so, especially when I first moved to America. We lived in an assisted apartment. I guess you have to make a certain amount or lower, and then you'd get also like food vouchers to eat at school if you again make a certain amount or lower. And yeah, we basically, when we came to America, we in a sense had nothing for the most part. Plus we don't know what American life was like. Luckily enough, my mom's sister lived here, and she acquainted us, took us into her house, and then after a few years we moved to again that apartment. And man, I'm telling some of my life here, but yeah, and kind of worked things out that way. So I did end up finishing high school, finishing college. I'm not making a lot of money. I'd say I'm making maybe average now. So this is the kind of thing that I guess is kind of very strange to me, that a lot of immigrants they tend to do a lot better than Americans born in America, should I say. And it's just so strange. I think there's a mindset in America. I really would like to talk about. I should stop talking this because this is going to be a long video. But anyways, immigrants generally, generation after generation, their kids tend to do better and better. And I'm doing much better than Mom was when she came over here. We essentially had nothing, literally had nothing. And I think the thing that he needs, when I feel state here, is also like single parenthood, single mothers. Either the father was a deadbeat father, or maybe the mother wasn't really kind or was like cruel to the father and kind of kicked them out of the life. That's what a lot of people won't talk about. It's the fact that and the father wants the child, but the mother was terrible, and the father wants the child, but because of the court system here, the mother will get the child no matter what, and the father doesn't. Even if the mother gives up the child to adoption, the father still cannot get the child. I don't know what percentages of what, like whether it's a terrible father or terrible mother, and then you have just promiscuous people, and then it's just all like, I think a big factor too is single parent household, on top of what's causing a lot of this the situation about not finishing high school, troublesome kids, like going out doing bad stuff, a lot of big issues. And it's, again, not all, and poverty being a contributing factor. I don't know what percentage personally. Again, I'm just spewing out my opinions here, but obviously it's not necessarily just the poor. There's a few people out there, I don't know whether it's the exception, that can break that statistics, that they're poor, they come from a single parent household. It's just because the kids stayed away from gangs or drugs or bad people, and they focus on their school. They have an understanding of what needs to be their focus in life. I don't know what percentage of that curtails to a kid becoming, say, a graduate versus not.
America, prides itself, it keeps telling itself it's the best country in the world. We have to watch this. I mean, I live here. I lived here for 15 years. There's a reason. We like it here a lot. But nobody has a guaranteed place anymore.
Of course, it never was.
When there's a book written about the fate of empires by a guy called Jared Diamond. It's a very good book. It's called Collapse. If there's a problem for Jared, it's that he gives you too much on the cover. He needs to come up with a more elliptic title if he wants to sell copies of his book, I think. What happens to empires? They collapse. We're done. Really. He should have called the book, What Does Happen to Empires? Read on. Now, you see, I'm from England. I'll keep mentioning it from now on, just so that... If in the middle of the 19th century, Britain had the largest empire in human history. That's not jingoism, it's just a matter of historical fact. We had the biggest military program, the biggest economy, the biggest colonial program. If you had gone to the court of Queen Victoria in 1870 and said, this empire will be over within a generation, you'd have been laughed out of the building. But it was. By 1918, we'd lost a generation of people in another foolish war. We were virtually bankrupted by it. In 1939, it all happened again, and in 1945, it was finished. I was born in 1950 in Liverpool, and we played in bomb craters, and we were on rationing. We had powdered orange juice, powdered eggs, and powdered milk on rations from the central government with ration books. That's how I grew up for the first 10 years. It was over, completely gone. It collapsed. Now, what I'm saying is that America is living a dream at the moment, which is that all this is completely sustainable and can carry on in perpetuity. And it won't. I'm not preaching for an empire either, by the way. It's just that America is the most powerful place on the planet at the moment. And it's hemorrhaging generations of children with no economic hope, no purchase on a life that can add up to anything so far, wallowing in all kinds of crime and drug abuse. I'm going to Chicago next week, where they have terrible problems with the education system.
And real quick before we move on with that one, and man, I could only imagine what he thinks about today, where, yeah, I mean, I don't think America will be destroyed by outside forces necessarily, just because, one, we're kind of isolated in terms of the rest of the world, so you have to literally have an ocean fleet to get over here, and I think America has one of the largest ocean-faring navies or whatever. But even that, it's just the sheer fact that I think if America's going to fall, it's going to be from within. Corruption, the extremist groups are just going to tear the country apart. Just because, again, America does have the strongest military power, but not even that. Just to get to America is a feat on its own. You have to have a very large navy, and then overcome the land defenses and whatnot. So I don't think it'll be taken over by external forces. I think it'll crumble from within. Feels like it at the moment, but good lord, it feels like America's being held on by duct tape or something.
And to say that this isn't the consequence of America's economic policies is just self-delusional. It's a sort of flagrant disregard of the well-being of the people. That America is being hoisted on its own petard here, economically. With so much wealth concentrated in such a small group of people, and so I'm not wishing for it, argue for it. I don't wish it on any country. It's just that this is a very serious issue for this country, as we're in this country and we're talking about it. But the good news is, as well, there are lots of wonderful people doing fantastic things. I travel around the country a lot. I'm going to Chattanooga in the morning, and they're doing a whole thing to revive their education.
As you were saying, empires, and you talked about England. Well, it was a changing situation in the world, and there was a terrible war and whatever. But empires have closed down without any major disasters like World War II. For example, in India, many empires rose which spread right across subcontinent, and they just closed down by themselves without any war, without any external interference. And there is a significant, if you look at the thing, there was a time when 36% of the world's economy was India, where everybody wanted to go to India, and one guy made a mistake and landed up here,
Oh, yeah.
It's a celebrated mistake. A very wrong perception of which direction is which, all right?
Yeah.
He mistook the sunset for sunrise. He went west instead of east. Anyway, but that economy, which was over 30% of the world's economy, just closed down simply because they were doing so well, and they decided they need to protect themselves. This was the biggest mistake they did. In trying to protect themselves, what was a very transparent culture, they tried to become little introvert. And they successfully did it, and that just pushed it down completely. Then came the innovations, then came all the other things.
Real quick, That's interesting because I think, again, this goes back to some movies and stuff, which seems to be very true. I think Japan closed themselves off to the West, but I think China did not, and China was prospering, or it was something along those lines. One of the Asian countries, like they shut themselves off from the West because they didn't want Western influence, and then the opposing country accepted the West, and they became kind of the superpower. It's very interesting. Like when you close yourself off from the world, obviously you can only do so much in your own country, and other countries could be developing other things because of natural resources that they have. I guess that's a good lesson, never to close yourself off.
But one of the biggest undoing for India is they became introvert. They thought they had to protect themselves. Till then, they never protected themselves. They embraced everything. The moment they thought they have to protect themselves, it started going down. If you protect it, you must understand the walls of protection that you build are also walls of self-imprisonment after some time.
So what was the worst thing about school for you when you were a kid?
You asking me or him?
I'll ask you, and maybe Sadhguru will.
Of course, both.
I didn't have a terrible time at school, I have to say. I mean, the school I went to kind of broadly worked for me.
Oh.
The main thing was that there were, let's say I went to a grammar school, you know, and although I'm very keen to qualify the importance of academic work, I always rather liked it. You know, it worked for me, and because it's meant to work for some people. But the thing I disliked most about it was we were put on a fast track at school, and it meant therefore we had to drop certain things. So I liked art at school. And because we were supposed to be taking our exams at 15, I went to see the head teacher, and I opted to do art, and he said it was either art or German. That's an interesting conflict, wasn't it? And I said, what do you think I should do? He said, well, if I were you, I would do... I said, I want to do art in German. He said, well, the thing is, you can't do art in German. Which baffled me, you know, because I'd seen films of Germany and there were pictures everywhere. You know, I thought, well, presumably somebody in Germany is capable of doing art. And he said, if I were you, I would do German. I said, why? He said, it would be more useful. And I was baffled by it. I thought, why would German be more useful than art? I mean, it is useful, I'm not saying it's not. Especially in Germany, I mean, it's it's an absolute bonus, you know, but the implication that somehow art was useless, and that's what became clear, is that the school curriculum is divided into two groups of subjects. It still is. Well, the first problem is the idea of subjects. but if you accept that for a moment, most school curricula are divided into two groups of subjects, useful ones and useless ones. And the useless ones are, you know, art and music and dance and so on, things like that. So I had to...
Oops, sorry. Let me rewind that. The useless ones, so let's get to this.
And the useless one...
Art, music, and dance, and so on, and things like that. I think the reason for that, when it comes time of war, these are not things that you can have the luxury of having. You cannot, you know, especially during World War II with the Great Britain, considering that they were being bombarded by Germany. You don't have time for music, you don't have time for dance, you don't have time for art. I mean, the only time you have time for music, dance, or art is like between gunshots, basically, during trench warfares or between the bombings, you know. It's the only way to keep your humanity, that life is still somewhat normal. But generally speaking, you don't really have time for that because you're just worried about, you know, not dying out there, or not dying, basically. You know, if someone's trying to cross the trench or throw a grenade or a bomb or a plane or whatever it may be, you know, that's why it was kind of useless at the time. And during warring times, obviously, it seems to be useless. It's because you need to defend yourself. That is vitally more important when you have luxury and time and not worried about dying or hunger or shelter or water. Then art, music, and dance comes into play. I guess I wonder if that's a very good indication of how well a country is, if there's a lot of art, music, and dance in it. Or perhaps if it's not well off, but yet they have a lot of it, that just shows the culture of the people, that, you know, there are, was it more important things? No, I'd say they tend to be happier probably because even though they don't have technology, computers, cell phones, and all that, but yet they do dance, art, and music together and show this great joy. It shows that they care more about their happiness than technology. I don't know how to describe that.
So, you know, art and music and dance and so on, things like that. So I had to drop art to do German. It never worked out. I never got the hang of German. And the reason is, it's impossible. You cannot speak German. We know this to be true. I mean, I tried, but German's like Latin. You know, it's you have verbs that conjugate, nouns that decline. The word order has to come in the same thing. The verb has to be there in the sentence. They're long sentences. You know, so you can have a long compound German sentence with the verb at the end. So if you talk to somebody in German, it can be ages. You know what. You know, I mean, you know who was involved, where this thing happened, you know, but you've no idea what they did until the last word shows up. You're like, does verb occurs about 15 minutes later? Oh, that was what they were doing. I've absolutely no idea. Actually, I went and gave a talk at in Vienna when I graduated college. I went to go and speak at this education conference, and I was picked up, you know, at the airport in a taxi, and the guy said to me in German, "Where are you from?" To which I replied, "Yesterday evening," in which I now know was a mixture of French and German. And he said, "Oh, you were English?" I said, "Yes, but I can do art." And but it's funny because when they called me about this thing in advance, they said, "You're going to give this talk to all these educators. So would you like to give your talk in English or German?" So on the phone, I acted like this was a big dilemma, you know. Because in Germany, they all speak English anyway. That's the thing, you get there, they all speak English to you. So I acted like it was a real tear, you know. And I said, "Look, I think in the end, I'll give this talk in English." Because I should say, I took my oral exam in German at school, and I failed it twice. And the reason is that, you know, it's a very complicated language. It's like Latin, but if you've got a Latin translation to do, you've got till next Tuesday, you know, and a pencil. You know, whereas in Germany, they expect a reply immediately. Oh. And I just couldn't get the hang of this thing at all. So I did the German oral exam, and I failed it, the first one, because I spent the whole exam standing up, having misunderstood the instruction to sit down. So, fated the right way. Anyway, so when they called me on the phone and said, "Do you want to give this talk in English or German?" I said, "Look, I'll do it in English, I think." They said, "Why is that?" I said, "Well, look, there's several reasons. One is it'll be longer. You know, more than 3 minutes, which is my conversational range in German currently. Secondly, it will deal with more complicated issues than my favourite things. You know, it's what I'm largely confined to. And thirdly, the audience won't have to keep standing up and sitting down, because I'm still annoyed about that. You know. So it was these choices. You know, I had to drop it to do something I didn't want to do. We never did music at school because it wasn't thought to be relevant to the academic track. So it's that stuff, you know. And I wouldn't over psychologize it, but it was the lack of those things on my own education that made me think hard about why they mattered. In fact, I wanted to ask you, if you don't have to answer now, obviously it's entirely up to you, but one of the things I've often argued is that dance in schools is as important as math. And to most Western people, that sounds like a bizarre exaggeration of something. But it's not. You know, people are embodied. You know, we are physical creatures. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of dance companies. I'm the patron of the London School of Contemporary Dance, you know, Martha Graham's company in the UK. And to watch dancers at work is the most extraordinary thing. You know, it's not just a physical activity, of course not. It's a holistic activity. And I know in one of your schools, dance is a very central part of. I remember you saying in one of your talks that you equated dance with science. Is that right? I'm not saying it is a science, but the scientific nature of dance. I mean,
real quick, comment on that about dance and math being of equal importance. I think a lot of people in the Western world, the reason why they would see that a little bit as confusing is because and especially for me, I would disagree with him initially, but then as I pay attention, I get what he's saying. The arts are something that's needed to kind of put, I don't know how to describe it, but humanity back in humans, because throughout humanity, throughout the ages, dance and song and stories were always an art and always something there to kind of uplift the spirit, if you would say. Kind of make this grim, dark world a little bit lighter and enjoyable. But if you look at modern times where this is just kind of like luxury, nice things to have, what is more important? Would you rather have someone who doesn't know anything learn the sciences, math, science, the math and science, I don't know what the other one would be, or would you rather him learn dance and art and all that, meaning that he wouldn't know how to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, or doesn't know what an atom is, or what not mix the chemicals, or read the label on the chemicals? Obviously, a lot of people say, well, that's more important because you need to know how to do your taxes, or when you go buy something, that you know how much you're paying, that you're not getting scammed, and when you when you write, that's more important than art because you need to be able to sign your signature, read a piece of paper and contracts and sign and all that, and also to formulate words so you don't sound dumb. And what is it? In science, to make sure that when you read chemicals, you know, like alcohol or like isopropyl alcohol, peroxide, and like sulfuric acid, that you don't dip your hands in those things, thinking that they're for cleaning your hands. Well, I don't know about peroxide and alcohol, but sulfuric acid, definitely no. Alcohol, I'm pretty sure that it's okay for a few seconds, but don't keep it on your hands for too long, maybe. But yeah, so and that's the reason for the importance of math and science, because that's kind of part of the world that's needed. It's not something fun, something exciting necessarily. Some people do find it fun, but it's not something that will raise your creativity. It's more like common sense and practicality. So, and I do agree with what he's saying and what Sadhguru is saying now, as I understand that you need a little bit of practicality, the sciences, and then a little bit of the humanity, or to live, as Sadhguru would say, to live life, which is the arts, to some degree. Obviously, if you look at a transactional reality, that's what's kind of needed, because you can't be too practical and sacrifice your creativity or your wonder, your seeking, your nature.
The way I perceive the world, I'll continue from the question that Max asked. What is the most terrible thing about the school? I don't know, because I was not there.
Yes. I thought maybe sitting
I didn't
there.
suffer that.
Solves that, isn't it?
That's why I
Just
said,
don't go in.
So I remember so well, which I've shared with many people. I remembered so well that this assessment that she was talking about, a big investment in assessment, some 16 billion in assessing children, which is unknowingly grading them. And this grading, life does not respect, only schools and education systems respect. In the end, who does well in the world is not determined by how much marks they got somewhere, but they are given an extra advantage because they got so many marks. So I remember these monthly tests or the monthly report cards that were given out. I would see some children strutting around because they are first, second, something, and some children sitting and crying because they're afraid to go home. I don't know what they had in their report cards. As far as I was concerned, whenever it was given to me, I just took it and gave it to my dad. He would open and he would blow. I just didn't know what's happening. This is a communication between my teacher and my father. I never once opened and saw what is written in it. Because I thought this is something between the two of them. Because as far as I was concerned, every test paper I always gave it empty. Didn't write a word on it.
Oh.
Or I doodled something. If they insisted, I wrote my name, otherwise I wouldn't write that either. And every time I would change the spelling of my name. Okay? Because the Germans pronounce J as A or Y, So my name starts with J. For some time I wrote it with Y, sometimes I wrote it with W. I tried all kinds of spellings. They said, according to English language, they said a proper noun can be spelled any way you want it. So every test paper, I spelt it differently, as I felt like it. Why I'm saying this is, and when the final test or exam came that I have to go to the next class, my concern was I don't want to be left behind with junior students, I want to go with my friends. So I always passed that one. So people always wondered, is 6 zeros in every test, how do you get to pass this one? I wrote my paper only for 35 marks, which is passing mark. Right through my education, half an hour bell, till half an hour bell in India you can't get up and leave. I'm just waiting for the 30-minute bell. The moment the bell rings, I'll get up and leave. Because by then I've written and I've calculated, I'm getting 37, 36, I'm done, I'm out. Always, if you look at my report cards right through, everything is 35, 36, 37, 35, 36, 37, all subjects. Teachers would beg me, you may know something else, please sit down and write. I said, that's not the point, I got 35. I'm moving to the next class and that's all that matters to me. That's the only concern, that I don't want to be left with younger children.
Real quick, that's kind of funny. It's like he's just basically doing the bare minimum to pass. I guess that's the kind of the perspective that those teachers have. It's like, why are you doing just the bare minimum? Why don't you just complete it all? I would have figured that maybe it's like, why don't you complete it all just in case you got some of those wrong? You don't want to just do what you think is enough, then realize that you made one mistake, and now you don't make it pass because you just didn't bother to answer the rest of the questions.
I want to move with my friends. Except for that, I had no interest in anything. This doesn't mean I had no interest in anything at all. I paid enormous attention to every detail of what's around me, with which I developed a certain sense of geometry about everything. By the time I come to 8th standard, my mathematics paper was divided like this. It is 30 marks for geometry, 30 for arithmetic and the remaining for algebra. I never bothered, I don't understand why alphabets and numbers are mixed up. So, geometry I got 30 out of 30, everything else, arithmetic I got 5. That's about it, I went on. Because my sense of geometry is about how everything stands. When I look at the body, I look at the geometry, not at the complexion, not at the shape and form. I look at the geometry, how you're sitting. If I just see how you sit and stand, I will tell you in next 10 years' time what problems you will have with your body.
Oh, jeez.
So my sense of geometry came by simply paying enormous attention to anything and everything. It grew to such a point, if I just find a leaf, I could just sit like this for 5, 6 hours at a time. This is one thing I feel we have to bring to our children, ability to attend to something, whether it's important or not important is not your business. My father, being a very high-level academic excellence in his life, being a physician, supposed to be a very strict disciplinarian, which unfortunately or fortunately didn't work on me. Every day, evening 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we are supposed to read our textbooks, however uninteresting they are, it doesn't matter. So I would open the book like this. I find a little speck on the paper. This speck would absorb me for the next 2 hours. Without reading a single alphabet, I would sit like this for 2 hours. I wouldn't read a single alphabet on the book, but I would not be looking here and there. I'm totally with the tiny little speck on the paper. I'm saying, this is a big mistake we have done. As I said earlier, we have set strong opposites. This is important, this is not important. I think if human intelligence applies itself to every little thing will explode into a new cosmos by itself. This is what a human being is here for, to enhance life in such a way that no other creature can do it. But unfortunately, we have taken strong positions. This is important, this is not important, so it's going away. Right now, the only thing that's important is what serves our economic engine is the only important thing. This whole dissertation about German and art is just this. What is important? What will earn you more bucks? What will not earn you money? That's the question.
Oh, that's kind of strange now that he says that, because there is this kind of making fun of there's people out there who are taking art degrees in something that there's no money to be made, and the biggest problem is the sheer fact that these people, well, they say to study useless degrees, but and these people are now walking out with like $100,000 in debt, $200,000 in debt with a degree that they can't do anything with. I will say that, don't go to college or I won't say don't go to college, but know what you want to do and see if it requires college. Don't just go to college just because everyone's doing it. A lot of people are going into major debt and then graduating with a college degree that they can't find a job in, even if it's a good degree, like say something in nursing, right, which is generally needed. But let's just say you live in a particular area, there's not a lot of nursing requirements. If you can't move out of that area, then you kind of have a useless degree. If you can't move out to find a job, or you can't get a job in your location, that's not very good. But it's to be fair though, it's kind of hard to know whether something is needed or not. Although you can kind of tell in the world what generally is needed or not. Nursing, generally speaking, is needed. You don't need a degree in arts, I guess, maybe, I don't know. Like, you need a degree to know what paint looks like or something, I don't know. I mean, I understand there's certain things that you need a degree in, certain things you don't. It's kind of weird to say that you need a degree in arts. Like, I don't know what painting looks like. The painting of a person doesn't quite look right. Van Gogh, is it Van Gogh? No, it's Picasso. Picasso clearly didn't go to school for symmetry or knowing what real people look like, or fruits.
That is the fundamental base question. If we do not remove this from our education system, there will be no education. There will only be one more manufacturing unit.
I've been hogging this microphone, hoping that I would have power to ask you a question. So, Sir Ken, you're still wearing your single-function device. I hope your daughter is now wearing the multifunctional device watch.
Yep.
My serious question is
I'll explain.
Your comment about flawed enterprise as an education is really resonating with me, especially how the government and regulatory policies are influencing our education system. And America is really the most powerful country in the world, but we have worse than some of the third world country education system. But we also have the best universities and best boarding schools, and we have very flawed public school system as well as community colleges.
That's kind of funny, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of weird too. I mean, great or bad or however you want to look at it, it's the fact there's a lot of people from out of country trying to come to the United States to go to school. I think it's great that these things can be provided, and it's kind of sad that Americans don't strive for something better. And not all Americans, obviously, but it's kind of weird that you see. Again, I don't know this to be true, but I have a feeling there are probably a lot more foreign students going into these high state colleges than Americans, and it's probably like maybe 30% probably foreign students. I think it's great that they're opening up to the world to allow people in there, but at the same time kind of sad that Americans are not taking opportunities, or not passing this test at a higher standard so that they can beat out these foreign students. But these foreign students are scoring much. It's probably also money, probably rich foreign students getting in there. It was from what I heard from a friend too, and I wouldn't doubt it. Colleges, they got to make money, but I heard there could be some unfairness into it. Same thing for even in-house, like Americans who may have their child, they're not that smart, but they pay the college off so that they can bypass some Americans who actually studied and who are poor but have scored really high, but they don't get in just because they're not bribed, I guess, to get into the college. It's kind of sad. I mean, a pretty great country, and the people, I want to say all of them, it just feels like it's getting worse. Like they're not striving for anything just because life is so easy. It's kind of sad, honestly. But I have hope too, like Ken has said, there are bad parts in the country that is sad to see, but also there's also hope in the country because you do see some people striving. It's always going to be a mixed bag, of course.
If your the single advisor to the new president, what policies would you recommend so that America becomes, again, the most powerful country in the world in our human capital, and we can make the impact moving forward?
Well, just to say, I think there are brilliant public schools in America.
And there are crappy ones too.
And public education is one of the kind of jewels in the crown of America's achievement over the past 200 years. And I know there's a growth in charter schools and independent schools and all of that, but for most kids, public school is not their best shot, it's their only shot. Mm-hmm. And getting public schools right and not giving up on them, I think, is a really major priority, which I'd want to say to any incoming president, that there's been a clear attempt to break up public education, or at least to bring the profit motive into it. Education worldwide is estimated to be, just on the economic frontier, a $5.5 trillion business. It's why so many big publishers, independent entrepreneurs are getting into education, why so many tech companies are getting into it. It's like another gold rush. And I'm not against people with good, interesting ideas getting involved in education, as long as we keep remembering it's children that we're dealing with.
Our future.
And young people, and they're not there to make people profits. And I do think it's very important that any incoming president, that's the first thing I'd want to say. The second is that, by the way, the community college system is fantastic.
Yeah, actually.
And more people are going to community college because the costs of going to college have become so ridiculous. I mean, student debt now is what, $1.3 trillion, more than all credit card debt. So I think that's the second thing. I think it's an amazing asset in this country. But the third is just the things that we've been saying here about the importance of getting teaching and learning right. I mean, I'm not, and I don't think any of us shouldn't have as our priority making America the most powerful country in the world. If I were in England, I wouldn't want England or Great Britain to be the most powerful country in the world. I think the issues are bigger now than countries, and international competitions like these aren't terribly helpful. I think we need a much bigger global and compassionate view of what we're trying to get done. Much more collaboration, much more integration of interests. I mean, for example, by common consent, the best education system in the world at the moment is Finland. And Finland set about revising its education system 40 years ago at around the same time that America did. America got into all this after the Nation at Risk report under the Reagan administration. And America went down the road of standardization and testing and narrowing the curriculum, and it hasn't worked. I mean, billions of dollars being spent with no improvement to speak of.
Real quick, and I guess, that's a great example for any other country out there. Like, if this is something that's not working, then definitely don't follow into it.
Massive frustration on the part of teachers, principals, disaffection among kids. Hasn't worked. Finland, meanwhile, over the past 40 years, has created the best education system on earth nationally by student achievement, retention, satisfaction, engagement, fulfillment, professional respect for teachers, satisfaction of parents, stability of their communities. It's become an exemplary system. And insofar as they matter at all, these international league tables show that Finland is also close or near the top there too, in the areas that are being tested. It's a fantastic system. And it's the exact opposite. The Finnish education system is not based on competition, it's based on collaboration. Schools work together, teachers work together, universities work with schools, with parents. There's no standardized testing in Finland, as in none. Well, there's one at the end of high school. And there's almost 100% graduation rate. And it works. And then people say, well, you can't compare Finland to America. Well, in population terms, it's hard to do that because Finland has a population of, 5.5 million. America's, 310 million now. But the fact is that education in America is organized mainly at the state level. And there are 30 states in America with populations smaller than or equal to Finland. I do a lot of work in Oklahoma. There are 3.5 million people in Oklahoma. I think Vermont has something less than 1 million. I was in Wyoming recently. I was the only person there. It's just me. Just me and the driver looking for the entrance. So it's not that we should all try to be Finnish and call our capitals New Helsinki. It's not that. It's that the principles apply, and the principles are pretty straightforward. One of the things that I want to say is we talked about the Industrial Revolution and the origins of education in the Industrial Revolution, and it is. You can see it. It's about conformity and compliance, but I think the real comparison is not with industrial manufacturing. It's with industrial agriculture, which also developed during the 19th century. And industrial agriculture completely subverted the old organic systems. It was based on mechanization, which meant that you could cultivate single crop farms as far as you could see. And you go to the Midwest, it's corn as far as the eye will take you, or it's potatoes as far as you can see to the horizon. That was made possible by mechanization. The other innovation was chemical fertilizers, which made it possible for things to grow bigger and faster. And the third innovation was pesticides, because once you created these big monocultural farms, they lacked the natural protectiveness that mixed farming creates. So we had to soak these things in these pesticides to keep them from being infested with insects. And it worked, has worked for a while. The problem is that it's destroyed topsoils around the world, which are eroding at a prodigious rate.
And there goes Save the Soil with Sadhguru, by the way. I mean, and this is something I talked about in that thing too. It's like, I remember hearing about this, and it's kind of crazy to think, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know what they're doing in the U.S., but I guess it's just because, the U.S. is mostly just land. People are not populated everywhere. In the Midwest, it's just basically open land. Like, you're kind of making fun there. It's like, it was just me and the driver, because there's hardly a lot of people living in some of these states. They're just open farm field, and like, if one farm field's destroyed, then they just move on to the next one, which is kind of a terrible thing. I just hope that the farmers take care of their land, because if they can't destroy all the lands, then they'll have nothing to farm with.
It's poisoned waterways, it's polluting the oceans, and it's not sustainable. The whole world, we all depend upon a very narrow smear of topsoil, less than a few feet thick, that doesn't cover the whole world, it just covers part of it. Most of the earth is rock or water, and without this we can't, and it's taken millions of years for this stuff to accumulate. And industrial agriculture is destroying it. And you see it, it's what happened in the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma, it's happened in other parts of the world too. The thing about this system, it's been very successful, but it's completely unsustainable, it's unnatural. Same thing with animals. We're keeping animals in these terrible compounds, we're pumping them full of antibiotics and hormones to make them grow bigger and faster, and because they live in these terrible conditions, they cross-infect, so we pump them full of this stuff. The thing about industrial agriculture, it's all been based on output and yield, and people will tell you that industrial agriculture the interesting thing is the focus is on the plant, or the animal. It's getting it bigger. It's yield and output. Organic farming is based on the opposite principle, which is they don't focus on the plant, they focus on the soil. The exact opposite thing. If you get the soil right through natural process of composting and crop rotation, you don't need all these pesticides, and you don't need to keep renewing the soil. It does that itself. And the organic farmers know that. If you get the soil right, the plant will be fine. Don't focus on the flat plant, focus on the conditions of growth.
But I think the problem with that is just it's so slow and doesn't produce enough. I think I remember watching on YouTube a comparison between GMO, like different kinds of fruits and organic fruits, and they did a blind test. I don't know how true it is, but when they did a comparison, a lot of people are picking the GMO, a non-organic fruit or vegetable. But again, I take that with a grain of salt. Definitely do your own research and try it out for yourself, or do more than just one research. I think it was just only like 1 or 2 videos I've seen of that, so I don't know how true that is. But I wouldn't doubt it, because whenever people plant GMOs type products is because they want to make sure it's very juicy or very sweet or very whatever it may be, to make it more flavorful, to make it more wanting. So it makes sense. It would make sense that a test would plan out that way, that these GMO type products would be like the better flavored, more flavorful. But perhaps someone who grew up with organic stuff, and they try something that's GMO, it's like, oh man, this tastes like too sweet or too juicy or whatever it may be. And the thing is though, is that I think I remember seeing again on another YouTube video is that thanks to this GMO type products and all the things that he was talking about here, is we're able to produce more. If it weren't for this, then there'd be struggle to feed the people. But he's also right, the fact that it's kind of destroying the topsoil because it's unnatural. Things are going so fast that the topsoil can't keep up with it.
And the same thing has exactly happened in our school system, I think. We've had these industrial systems, we've been focused on output, on yield, we've created sterile, inhuman conditions in our schools where people are not learning, even though we're getting data and so on. And along the way, what we've done is eroded the culture of learning. And all schools know, and I'm sure it's true of your schools, if you get the culture of the school right, get the culture right, then things grow. And it's applying those organic principles. And if we can get all schools to do that, then the problem will start to right itself.
I mean, what Ken just now said is the most important aspect. That is, education is not a production line. It's an organic happening. At the same time, from the question she asked, see, you cannot create an education system independent of the society in which we exist. Some ideal system. America is America. As he said, some principles from Finland you can take, but Finland is protected by oceans on all sides, and it is what it is. And cold also prevents lots of things. America is what it is. Children are not just learning from their teachers, they're learning from the street, they're learning from the culture around. So you cannot ever develop an education system independent of the ecosystem that's happening. Are we as a society willing to in some way cultivate the ecosystem in the society which is suitable for a child to grow up in the best possible way, is a question that all of us should ask. Are we going to do what we like to do, or are we going to be conscious of how this will impact future generations? Every action that we are performing is an important thing that we need to look at. Because educating a child is not just a teacher's business or school's business or parents' business, it is happening all the time. So, a more responsible attitude towards this, a larger consciousness about this, everything that you do our children are seeing, and what will happen to them tomorrow. If they start doing what you did at 18, they do it at 12, what will happen? If what they do at 12, somebody does it at 10, what happens? This is something that all of us need to pay some attention to, because education is not just happening in the school alone.
Wow, he's right about that. I mean, there are a lot of… I remember children not having cell phones. Even whenever smartphones existed, it's usually… they're pretty expensive at the time, I suppose. That's the reason why. But yeah, now you have freaking 6-year-olds, I guess, with freaking iPhones and expensive phones, and I'm like, my gosh. Whenever I was that age, obviously we didn't have cell phones. I don't think I got a not a smartphone, but just a cell phone with the numpads at college.
Yes, a certain part is happening, but I think child learns equally from outside as he learns from the school. Having said that, this entire approach of bringing creativity, I think the most important thing that schools are missing out is exposing children to more natural phenomena in the world. They have become an isolated information, cocoons of their own. They are living their cosmos through the phone. It's very, very important, I think every school invests in taking their children out, exposing them to natural phenomena and different thought process in the world, different cultures in the world, so that there is a more homogeneous approach to intelligence rather than right and wrong kind of intelligence. Why I'm saying this particularly specifically for American education system is, I see on the national news channel, people use words like good guys and bad guys. If somebody says such a thing in India, he's finished. I'm sure even in UK you cannot say that. But on the national news channel, major anchors referring to people as good guys and bad guys. I'm saying this has to go if we really want to cultivate an organic system where everybody grows to his full potential rather than being a product of a particular system. Thank you.
Okay, I was hoping towards the end there, when he was talking about organic system for schools, for children, I figured, you know, every child can be a little bit different, and how they learn is a little bit different. So it's up to the teachers, the local schools, the parents, the teachers mostly, because they're the ones with the child when they're teaching them, to understand how what's going on with the child, whether they're having issues learning or yeah, if they're having issues learning, and then to teach them in a different way, or maybe have them in a different class to teach them, you know, again in a different way that maybe is more much better for them, you know, where they can learn a lot better, because not every student learns the same way. Again, this is something that I saw some time ago about boys in America, where, you know, they're given drugs, they're given ADHD drugs because they can't sit in class for very long. They start, you know, wanting to go out and play or do other things, and instead of, you know, adapting the education to them, they end up just drugging them up so that they can sit in class for so long. So they kind of, it looks like, from what I'm seeing and hearing, I haven't really looked this up too much, but they seem like they're like zombies basically. Their life was sucked out of them because they're just sitting in class like hooked up on drugs basically. It's kind of sad that that America is just again, like I've said before, America's about quick fixes, you know. It isn't about taking the time to figure things out, do things differently. It's about finding the quickest way to the solution, almost no matter what that is. Drugs generally being like antidepressants if you're depressed, caffeine and alcohol, well not alcohol but caffeine. Hold on, I need some caffeine real quick. I inhaled the wrong time. But like caffeine to get you going throughout the day. Yeah, I inhaled at the wrong time there. Excuse me. But yeah, just things that quickly fixes things so that everyone goes down the same path, kind of like how the education system is. Everyone has to be taught the same. Everyone has the same test. Everyone's the same. And then if anyone's different, give them something to put them in the same path. Don't try to change it. But yeah, it's a very interesting video for sure. A lot of issues, very difficult to solve, kind of sucks. We talk about it all the time. It seems like nothing's being done, but I don't know. There's been movement with charter schools in America, I heard, and it seems like they're doing better there. So there's competition now. I know they talked about how competition is not working, but I mean, I can see it working, because hopefully the competition is to provide a better working environment, better education, where students can learn and all that. Because, you know, if there's no competition, then you don't have to really do anything, because you're the only thing they got. You're the only option. So, but if there's competition, then you're fighting for students in a sense, which sounds terrible, honestly, but at least they'll kind of, hopefully schools will step up to say, you know what, we need to do something to retain students. And, you know, it's not just about getting them A's or anything. It's about providing an environment which students can learn so that people want to come to you. I don't know what the true solution is. I'm just throwing ideas out there, things I've heard, what I think might work. Anyways, that's my reaction to this. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.